Gaurav Gupta, sir, Additional Director and Scientist E at Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Government of India. Sir is the first in the country to be awarded PhD in the area of digital forensics in the topic Study on Digital Forensic for Detection of Computer Frauds and Cyber Crimes in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Jadavpur University, Kolkata in 2009. He has been awarded ISCA Young Scientist Award from Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Sir in 2010 for his work in digitized document fraud detection. Currently, he has more than 18 years of research experience in the field of digital forensics to detect computer frauds and cyber crimes. He has developed scalable and efficient solutions for detection of computer frauds and cyber crimes. His research interests include development of efficient, low-cost portable digital forensic solutions. He worked on self-authentication documents, document fraud detection, privacy-preserving efficient digital forensic investigation, next-generation color QR codes with 3 to 4 times of storage capacity. Also developed methodologies and tools for extracting admissible digital evidence, data and timestamp authentication, stenography, digitized document fraud detection, and developing enhanced digital forensic principles. He has experience in the field of digital forensic investigation, information security, business process control, SOX, etc. Prior to joining KPMG, he has worked with Directorate of Forensic Science, Hyderabad. He was responsible for identifying and developing methodologies for key issues facing digital forensics to investigate computer fraud and cyber crimes and developed conceptual solutions for investigation of technological crimes admissible in the court of law. The benchmark set by an eminent person like him is itself a proof that this event is going to be very knowledgeable for all the attendees and surely going to help everyone in the dire future. So, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Gaurav Gupta, sir. Sir, it's an honor to have a personality like you to grace the event. I request you to kindly step forward and bestow some of your knowledge on all of us, as the platform is all yours.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So first of all, I'm thankful to Professor Govil for providing me this opportunity and making my task easier by highlighting and setting up the tone, how technology is impacting us, how criminals are misusing technology, and, what all can go wrong, and how this is a very, very important area where, whosoever wants to make a name and, there is a lot to contribute. There are low hanging fruits where you can do work in security, you can do work in forensics, you can do field in and around digital technology and cyber security and digital forensic area to make digital technology useful for everybody. Because right now we are using technology, but then we are not sure what can go wrong. We are in dark at times. So there are enormous opportunity. There are enormous amount of research problems. There are n number of projects which you can take up. Your thesis problem statement could be in cybersecurity and digital forensics. And believe me, it is an easy area. It is an area where very less competition is there. Very less number of people are working. And we also see that there is a great requirement in terms of number of people who are trained in cybersecurity and digital forensics, which industry as well as government and other industries can absorb. So this is a lucrative area. I must thank the management and Professor Govil in particular that they have identified such a unique topic, such a forward-looking area of cloud forensics and cybersecurity and digital forensics, to take up in this kind of program. So that shows that how forward-looking the vision they have, and this should be used. Whosoever the participants are, they should leverage these things, right? They should understand and find out what could be done, which can solve real-world problems, because this is an area which provides you opportunity for solving real-world problems. And as Professor Govil was, highlighting various facts about, how things has gone wrong. I have recently written a book titled Cyber Unsafe, where I have written relatable stories or, incidents which have taken place, the myths which people have around digital technologies, in a very simple, easy to understand language, including for youngsters and elderlies and, all sort of people who are using a smartphone or internet, because we all are using this kind of technology in one way or other, how people are misusing it. how they are exploiting it. And this book is available on Amazon. I can show you the link meanwhile. And I would encourage you to probably, uh, uh, go through the book, probably buy the book. This could be used as a gifting option also, because if you see, can you see my screen?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay. So if you see this right now, it's Cyber Unsafe. It has become in that internet and social media category bestseller also for the time being. So this is a book for which link I can, share. The idea is, you know, uh, the very important purpose of this book is more than spreading awareness. I strongly believe that, the best way to take revenge from cyber criminals is to make sure their modus operandi is known to everybody, so that now they can't do that kind of fraud against anyone else. So, I can safeguard myself by knowing how they are doing crime, but that will not solve the purpose, because they will find out someone else against whom they will do the crime. So the idea is, if we can spread all the techniques and the methodologies which criminals use to do fraud among all the fellow citizens of the country, the misuse of the technology can be stopped, and that is the best way to stop cyber crimes from happening. This book also contains a lot of ideas about what has to be solved, because not every problem has been solved. Some problems we have discussed in the book which require solution. So you can probably take up them as a project also, and that would help you find out what could be a probable thesis or a project idea and so on. While giving my keynote talk, I will also be discussing from those lines that, okay, what all can be solved, what all needs to be solved going forward. So with this, I will again thank Professor Govil for the opportunity. And now I will move on to my presentation. Let me know once you can see my screen. Can you see it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, I will be discussing about Cyber Unsafe and, how digital forensics comes to the rescue of the digital technology. It will encompass everything. It will encompass IoT. It will encompass, cloud. It will encompass all kind of digital technology which we are using. And I will start, from the very beginning, by asking a question. Can you tell me what makes cyber crimes possible for criminals? Anyone? What makes it possible for criminals to do cybercrime? As Professor Govil told that, it will be more productive if we are participative and interactive. Why cybercrimes happen? Who makes it possible for them?
The vulnerability, and I think
Mm-hmm.
vulnerability is one, and then I think loopholes and
Okay, fine, that's correct. What else? Anyone else? So according to me, there are many correct answers, but the most important answer is, it is us, cyberspace users. We at times are not aware, we at times are not responsible, we at times take things for granted. It's like when you're driving on a road and you're going on a two-wheeler, you don't want to wear a helmet, saying that it is very near you're going, nothing will happen to us. And that is the wrong belief, or the positive belief that, I am safe, nobody will do any harm to me, is harmful in cyberspace also. When we are using technology, we are not careful, and I will show you through examples how it happens. One more reason these crimes happen is convergence of technology to provide convenience. If you see how digital technology is evolving, it's evolving basically towards, converging various technologies into one, so that you can use it for your convenience. Take example, again, I'll ask you a question that, can you tell me, let's say, if 20 years earlier, in 2001, if somebody has to go for vacation, what kind of digital devices one person will carry? If you're going on a vacation in year 2001, what all digital devices will you carry with you? Anyone, please. You will carry many things, right? You will carry probably a digital camera, you will carry a handy cam, you will carry a digital diary, You will carry you know, uh, some kind of musical device like a Walkman, or some kind of portable device which can play music for you, and so on. So once upon a time, when we were going for a holiday, we were carrying so many devices. But today, if I had to carry a digital device, it would be one single device which has converged all of other things into one. So my mobile phone is my camera, my mobile phone is my video recorder, my mobile phone is my digital diary, my mobile phone is my alarm clock. It can record, it can play music for me, and so on. So everything has converged into one single device to provide convenience, because I want to carry only one device. But that opens gold mine for criminals. Now criminals know, if they get somehow into your device, let's say your mobile phone, if they can get into your mobile phone, hack your mobile phone, get access to the mobile phone, they can get all your personal data, videos, photos, your business plans. They can just ruin your life. So this convergence of technology is also driving more and more crimes, because right now phones has become, or our devices has become so powerful, so single point of failure, that everything is there, and if they compromise one or two things, they get everything about that particular user, and they can do crimes. And we are also seeing rapid speed of change of technology. Once upon a time, we used to change our devices in many years. My first phone, which I purchased in 2001, I changed it in 2006. So it lasted at least 5 years. After that, next phone was for 3 years. Can you tell me how old is your phone? Is there anybody who has a more than 2 year old phone? Say yes.
Yes,
Is there
sir.
anyone?
Yes.
So very few, right? Most people will be changing their phone every 2 years or 1 year or 6 months, depending on various reasons. It might get lost, it might get damaged, or new technologies has come and I want to upgrade. Let's say, 5G is knocking on the doors, right? So maybe next 1 year, when 5G is launched by all the service providers, we all have to change our phones, because my phone does not support 5G as of now. So there is a rapid change of technology. Again, let me ask you one more question. Is there anybody who has a laptop with a CD or a DVD drive? Is there anyone who is carrying a laptop with CD and DVD drive? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So
Yes, sir.
when did you last use CD and DVD in that drive? You might not have used it in last 6 months or a year, I guess, right?
Yes, sir.
So you have a technology, you have laptop with the CD and DVD drive, but you are not using it. Reason is, it has become obsolete. Your advent of broadband and 4G has made sure that you don't use CDs and DVDs anymore. So speed of change of technology is such fast that you have bought a laptop few years back when you were using DVDs, but today you are not using it. So you're carrying 1 kg or 400 grams of weight in your laptop everywhere, where you are not even using that particular part. So rapid speed of technology is also causing some trouble, because technology changes before you can develop security and forensic solutions, and that is where the opportunity lies. So if somebody has to start their research, what you should do is, you should target future technologies. You should try to find out what is the next generation storage technology, what is the next generation of mobile technology, what is the next generation of digital technology, and just find out what is going to come in our life, what are the new sensors which are going to come in our lives, how new IoT and cloud is going to change the businesses. If you can identify and anticipate those changes, if you start developing solutions for those changes today, by the time those changes become mainstream in next 6 months for a year, you will have solutions ready for those kind of new setups which are going to come. And that is how you should start your research. You should not work on technologies which are already in use. Most of those technologies, people are already in very final stage of developing solutions. You should develop solutions. You should take up your problem statements in upcoming technologies. So that's where the cloud becomes very, very important. IoT becomes very, very important. Now, one thing is technology. The technology is being impacting us, and which is being misused by criminals, cyber criminals. There's one more important thing, which is, when a crime has to happen, a cyber criminal has to exploit your emotions. So if you see, they will give you all sort of stories. They will tell you, you have won a lottery, I'm calling from a bank, and there are 100 different kind of stories which I can tell you, which are there documented everywhere, including my book. But the basic philosophy behind all these crimes is the emotions. So criminals are very, very smart. They develop their stories, they develop their techniques, which they develop to deceive human mind by manipulating the emotions of human beings. And that leads to computer frauds and cyber crimes. And let's see how. So, those bullet points onto the left side, we have written all the emotions. These are some of the very important emotions like trust, greed, panic, fear of missing out, threat and disruption, which are being exploited by criminals. So these emotions will remain same, stories will keep on changing. For example, trust, somebody is calling from a bank, they're sending you for a link of payment, they're asking you to do KYC, in case of greed, they're saying you have won a lottery, you have inherited something, or they're giving some very lucrative deal. So they're exploiting your greed there. Panic, that your card will be blocked, your account is hacked, your transaction has been done. So they will create a panic, and then they will ask you to do some activity which will lead to a cyber crime, which will be which will be useful for them, because in the state of panic you don't know what to do, and that is what is being exploited by criminals. Fear of missing out is very, very interesting. They don't give you time for thinking, because if you think and you talk to people, you can figure out something is wrong. So what they will do is they will give you a scheme saying this will expire in 5 minutes, 2 minutes. They will say this is, when you are going to various shopping sites, they are saying only 4 pieces are remaining. This deal expires in 2 minutes. Actually, this is not the case. That scheme will last for very long, and they will have multiple, high amount of stock in their stocks, but they will not tell you that. They will create the emotion of fear and fear of missing out so that you act fast without thinking much. Disruption. You all know that, demonetization happened. People started to use wallets when this toll became RFID became, or FASTags became mandatory for tolls. RFID tags were in short demand, and deadline was nearby. So all these disruptions actually is liked by criminals. Whenever there is a disruption, there is an opportunity for criminals to come out with interesting creative techniques to do fraud, and that is what they do. So what they are probably doing is they're exploiting your emotions, and then they keep on changing the story, but they don't change something known as the emotions. Can you tell me, out of these 5 websites, which one is not fraud? I've listed 5 websites. Which one do you think you will click and which one you will not click? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Five websites are there.
Fourth
Anyone?
number is valid.
All are valid. All are not
All are
valid.
fraud.
All are fraud.
Somebody saying 4th is fine, rest is fraud, right?
No, sir. The fourth is also the fraud.
4th is also fraud. Okay, so everybody saying all are fraud, or anybody saying anything which is fine? Okay, so first of all, Ozone.ru is like Flipkart of India or Amazon of India. It's a valid e-shopping website in Russia. Only thing is we have not heard of it. What is the problem with the next one? Yahoo.com?
It's a fake, sir.
Sir,
Yahoo,
there
that
is zero,
is
sir.
become digital.
No,
Zeros.
Sorry. Yeah, so it has YAH00.com. It is not OO.com. They're exploiting 0 and O difference, because our eyes cannot differentiate between O and 0. What is the problem with next one? SBI.co.in?
Instead of I, they use 1.
Okay, 4th one?
ONGC.co.on. It's a government body, not an company.
So if it is OGNC.gov.in, that is fine.
It's not correct.
It should be the ONGC.
no, sir.
Yeah, so if you carefully see, it is OGNC instead of ONGC. I have replaced G and N interchange. I have interchanged those. But most people, while reading it, can read it like ONGC. If I give you only this separately, difficult to find out. Same problem with Google, right? GOOGLE.com. Now, can you suggest me a technical solution to identify that these websites are fraud? Right now, you are relying on your eyes, right? So this is a research problem, according to me. That can you develop a browser which can check whether the website or the link which you are trying to browse is a fraudulent or not? This could be a very simple plugin which you can develop, And the easy way you have to do is, let me give you a solution also, the hint of solution. What we have done is, or what can be done about it is, whenever there is a website, let's say yahoo.com I'm trying to go, or let's say
Length of
google.com
URL.
I'm trying to go, the fifth one. So what will the browser do? It will see whatever the name, let's say g00gle.com I'm trying to go, it will go to Alexa for finding out the website ranks, because this website has subset of Google. So what it will do is, it will take top 100 websites from the ranking websites of all time high traffic, and G00GLE will be a subset of Google. So if it finds any website name which is a subset of a popular website name, and there is some characters which are not matching, that means that is a fraudulent website, because G00GLE.com will not be in top 100, whereas GOOGLE will be in top 100. So if there is a website which is in top 100 and whose subset somebody is trying to go, highly likely that is a fraudulent website. So it will be a string matching kind of solution, and then you can use various other factors in terms of which IP it is coming from, why it is going, and what kind of website is there, whether it's trusted or not. So if you add all those things into a small program, you can actually develop a browser-based plugin which can detect it or raise alarm to users saying this could be a fraudulent website, right? So that is what I'm trying to highlight, that digital world, there are a lot of opportunities which can be taken up to stop frauds, right? As we saw, emotions don't change, but the stories change. Yesterday bank was saying that you have to do KYC, today bank will say something else. So stories will keep on changing, but the underlying emotion which is being exploited by criminals will not change. Hence we need to understand, when we are developing solutions, that if anything is to do with emotions, you have to come out with a technical solution so that story can be identified. Right? In today's world, aankhon dekhi and kaanon suni may not be true. When we talk about deep fakes, I am sure you must have heard deep fakes and deep fake audios and videos and fake news. Let me show you an example. Can you see my browser?
Yes, sir.
So if I go to a website, this is known as this person does not exist.com. Have you heard of it? So there is a picture, right? If you see, if I stay here, it says on to the right side, imagined by a GAN, generative adversarial network. That means this image is not of a real woman. This image is made by an AI program hypothetically. So if I refresh this page, it will generate one more image. Again, this image is a fake image. This person is not a real person on earth. It has been drawn or generated by a program, and I can keep on refreshing and it will keep on giving me images of hypothetical persons who don't exist in this world. None of these pictures is of a real person. These persons don't exist, but they are realistic, right? Now somebody can open a Facebook account in the name of this photograph. You can download this photograph, open a Facebook account, and can send you a friend request. And we will not, at times we befriend people whom we don't know, and that is where problems may occur, right? So again, the point I'm trying to bring about is that aankhon dekhi, which whatever you see today, what I can do is I can take your photograph and I can then use AI to make a video of it, and where you are saying something which you actually have not said. So whatever you are seeing in terms of a video may not be true. Whatever you are hearing, because I can take 1 or 2 lines of your audio and can regenerate a new text which you are speaking, and I can make fake news and fake things, right? And that could be a disaster, because it is very difficult for people to not believe what they are seeing, because we human beings are so used to see what we see we believe, and what we hear we believe, that we are going to face trouble when these kind of frauds happen against us. So we should take everything, every video, every audio, every text, or every news with a pinch of salt, that what we are seeing may not be always true. So when we talk about digital forensics, we need to target the root cause rather than the symptoms, right? And that's where these 2 principles come handy. Cause-effect principle. Whenever there is an effect, there is a cause. We should try to reach to the cause by technical solutions. And technical solutions can be developed if we remember Locard's principle, which says every contact leaves a trace. which means whenever something is happening, there are traces of that particular action. If action is malicious, there are traces of a malicious action. Let me take an example for you. Let's say if I'm making a fake document, fake license. Let's say I have access of Professor Goville's driving license. Now what will I do? I will scan his license using a scanner. Once I've scanned the license, I will open that particular scanned image of the license. There I will put my photograph instead of his photograph. I will change my name instead of his name, and rest everything else I will keep like that. The expiry date and other things I will keep same. So my name and the photo has been changed in the scanned driving license of the genuine person. Now I will take a high quality print using a laser printer, color laser printer or something. And then once I have taken the print, I will laminate this document. Now I have a document which I am claiming as my driving license, which is a counterfeit license. Now see how Locard principle is going to help us here. Locard principle says every contact leaves a trace. So while taking the scanned image of the license, I use a scanner. When I put the document onto the glass for scanning on the scanner, light scanning processes, light is thrown onto the document and it's captured by the sensors into the scanners. So whenever that light is being reflected by the document and captured by the scanners to generate the image, scanner defects are captured also. Every scanner is perfect only for the naked eye. But if you magnify, there will be defects which are there, which are incorporated because of the scanning device. Similarly, when I'm printing is perfect only for the naked eye. Otherwise, if you magnify that particular document, you will see dots and scratches and lines, which are otherwise not available. So if a document is counterfeit, scanner and printer which has been used in generating that counterfeit document will have its own effects, its own remnants, its own wear and tear, which can be identified using image processing software. So what we have done is we have developed an image processing using image processing algorithm. We have developed a software which can extract the patterns which are left onto a counterfeit document by scanners and printers. So if you give me a document, I will run that software which will use image processing to find out effect of scanners, effect of printers, whether they are available in a document or not. If they are available in a document, we can find out whether it's a counterfeit or not. We can also find out which printer and which scanner has been used in generation of this document. So Locard principle is extremely important principle when we are developing any solution in digital forensics, because it tells you that go to those contact points, and those contact points you can apply normal computer science principles. Let's say in case of document fraud, image processing, in case of a network forensics, you will find out how data is exchanging, whether the data is deleted or not, what data has been installed, what software has been installed into for doing hacking. So traces of all those will be available in the storage media. So idea is always when you are developing a solutions for digital forensics, rely on Locard's principle to find out touch points, and those touch points will have traces. Then you have to find out computer science algorithms to quantify those traces. In this case, the defects or the noise of the printer and scanner. And when we talk about media, you have to find out the remnants of the data onto the storage media and so on. Any questions so far? Any questions so far? Anybody? Okay. So, I always tell that criminals are most creative but extremely lazy people on earth. And why I do say so is that, criminals are not after one particular person. They are developing, they're lazy. They want optimized outcomes. So they develop solutions which are generic. They want to defraud people, out of millions of people. They know that some people will always fall for the trap. So they're not mainly after one particular person. They are after somebody. So they will send emails of winning lottery to 1 million people, assuming thousands will open it, hundreds will accept and take action, and few hundred will actually give them the money. So the idea is criminals, because they are creative and lazy, we can use same traits to develop solutions which are digital forensic solutions to capture the criminals. Right? I can now discuss some stories, mining social media. So how many of you use social media? Or rather, who does not use social media? Can somebody tell me if there is anybody who is not using a Facebook or a WhatsApp or a smartphone? Is there anyone? I'm assuming no, right? And do you post your photographs? Let's say eating home cooked food, going to vacation, these kind of photographs, do you post on Facebook? I'm sure
Yes,
many
sir.
people post, right? So if somebody is posting a photograph saying eating home cooked food or doing puja at home, and there is one more photograph after 1 week he's posting that he's going to Goa for 10 days or 5 days, standing at Indira Gandhi International Airport, about to take a flight. These two photographs, now remember that this person does not exist.com. So let's say as a criminal, what I will do, I will go to this person does not exist.com, download a beautiful photograph, and then what I will do is I will open a Facebook account on that particular using that particular photograph and a very popular name or a very generic name like Rahul or Neha or some popular name. And then what I will do is I'll start sending Facebook requests, friend requests to anybody and everybody. Or for that matter, let's say I will target a particular society. I will go there in some function and can send out. Let's say if I want to search that who all stay in DLF phase 5, most people have their address listed in their Facebook account. So I can now send out requests of friends to n number of people, and let's say out of 1 lakh people, 1,000 people accept my friend request. Now what I will do is I'll wait for them to post photographs. Let's say out of those 1,000, 100 people posted a photograph doing puja at home or eating at home. Now from that photograph, I can extract what is the GPS location of that particular photograph, which means your home. I can also extract what kind of phone has been used to capture the photograph, let's say iPhone or a Android phone or a good quality phone or a bad quality phone. Now what I will do is, let's say I've identified 5 houses which are there in my range, near my locality, and where I want to do fraud. And their house address has been extracted from the photographs. And let's say out of those 5, 2 people post that they're going to Goa for 5 days. That means there are high chances their house, the GPS location which I have got, will be empty and nobody will be at home. Now what I will do is I'll do a conventional robbery. I'll go and break in the lock and do robbery assuming they are not there for 5 days. So they are doing conventional fraud using technology. And then they are doing other frauds also. I will come to that also. One important thing is internet gaming and addiction. This is becoming problematic now. We are seeing that high quality phones, very very fast internet speed, and availability of addictive games. All these companies are making games which are addictive in nature. They will design it in such a way that you are hooked and you don't want to leave the game, which means you are not concentrating on studies or your work or your daily activities, and you are spending money and you are spending your time. So we need to understand that technology was designed to be used as a tool, and if it is best when we are using it as a servant. But if it becomes our master, then it is causing lot of trouble. So if you see technology harms, how many phone numbers do you remember today? Anybody who remembers more than 10 numbers who can recall without seeing at the phone? Is there anyone? Difficult. Once upon a time, I knew more than 10 phone numbers, and I am assuming in around 2001, when the mobile phones were not very popular, most people remembered many numbers. Today, in the era where autocorrect and spell checks are there in my word processors, people are losing their, skills of remembering the correct spellings. We all use Google Maps, right? We are losing sense of direction. So we are becoming dumb because we are not using technology as a tool, but rather we are becoming dependent on technology. And so we need to also develop safe technology which is used as tool rather than we are becoming addicted and hooked. So that is how we should also develop security solutions and forensic solutions and an enhancement in technology which will make technology a constructive thing rather than at times addictive. Right, luring by providing free. This is very very interesting. How many of you use public chargers for charging your phone, let's say at airport or in malls? Do you use that? Anyone?
No, sir.
Yes, no?
No, sir.
Nobody charges their phone outside their home? Let's say you're traveling for 20 hours, your phone will definitely run out. Or let's say your power bank has also run out. What will you do? And there is a charger available at airport and you are there for 2 hours. You will not charge?
Yes, sir, you can charge.
When you charge, whenever you connect, have malicious softwares which will be delivered to your phone. Now what should you do? Not charging is not an option because you can't live without your phone. So there are multiple answers to it. One is if you are carrying a power bank, you charge your power bank from that public charger because power bank does not have an operating system. That means no virus can go to your power bank. And then using power bank you charge your phone. And in case you are not having a power bank, switch off your phone, then charge your phone, because in switched off mode operating system is not there. Again, it cannot infect you. Right? So what I'm saying is there are very easy ways using which we can safeguard ourselves. Problem is we don't know about these things. All these things need to be known to us, and we need to spread all these things that, okay, how to use technology and what criminals can do and how to avoid it. Okay, let's say if you find a pen drive or a USB, what will you do? You found a USB in parking lot or somewhere. What will you do? Anybody? Come on, this is an easy question.
Try to check the content.
You will try to connect it and see if you are a good person, you will connect to the pen drive to some device and find out whose pen drive is this so that you can return. And if you are malicious or if you are greedy, you will connect it to find out what data it has and can I use the pen drive. In both cases, almost 90% of the pen drives are intentionally thrown here and there where people can find it because they contain viruses and malwares or ransomwares, and once you connect, it will infect your machine. So if you get any such device, do not connect to your computer. If you at all have to connect, use something known as write blockers. These kind of devices are there which will block any kind of writing back to your machine. So it is one way only. So those kind of readers you should buy and then connect. But my suggestion is never connect. Don't even bother about them. Right? So this free is a very problematic word. You are getting Google for free, Gmail for free, pen drives in parking lot, charging free at airport. Anything free is a problem. Big problem or small problem, you have to figure out, because free is a way where they are trying to lure you. Once they are luring you, you are going to either be addicted or some virus or ransomware has to be installed. Right? How frequently do you take backup of your mobile phone? Okay, do you know, let's say if you lose your mobile phone, what should be your first step? Anyone? If you lose your mobile phone, what will be the first thing you will do?
We'll block the SIM.
Will you do a FIR? Or you will get a new SIM, or you will try to search the phone, or you will try to put your IMEI number on telecom website so that nobody can use it?
First, we'll go for FIS.
First you will go for FIR. Anyone else has a different view?
Sir, last option, sir.
Blocking the IMEI number.
Okay. So according to me, first thing you should do is block the SIM. Reason is, if you don't block the SIM, let's say if I have taken your phone, by the time you will do FIR and block the IMEI number, I'm not going to use your handset like that. IMEI number can be changed in a handset, but I will do it later as a criminal. First thing I will do is I'll take out the SIM from your phone, put it into my phone. Now your SIM is working. Now I'll give a call to one more phone number of mine so that I know what is your number, because your number will get displayed when I'm making a call from your number. Once I know your number, I will install the WhatsApp into a phone using your number, and it will verify you by sending an SMS. And since SMSs are coming, you have not blocked it, you will be authenticated, which means your WhatsApp number has been authenticated onto a different number, freely available to be used. Now what it will do? Your SIM will also have phone number stored. I will send out to all the SIM card numbers, whichever is stored in the SIM card, I will send those people a WhatsApp message saying, I have been hit by a car, I am in hospital, this one person has brought me to the hospital, they require 50,000 rupees urgently to start the proceeding, I don't know what to do, can you please send, whatever amount you can send to this friend of mine who has brought me to hospital, and his number is 98 whatever XYZPQR. And let's say there are 500 numbers in your SIM, and 500 people whom you have interacted ever receive this message. What will happen? You are busy in FIR or blocking the IMEI number, and out of those 500, 10 people have sent 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 rupees in panic because they care for you. right? And this is easily doable. This is actually what criminals do. So that's what I'm trying to say. Most of us don't know in which scenario what to do. When something goes wrong with phone, we don't know what to do. When something with Gmail goes wrong, we don't know what to do. When something we are doing something on social media, something goes wrong, what to do. We all don't know. So all these technological crimes are happening, and people are not. So people we don't talk about. We are not having awareness of how all these crimes are happening and what should be our learnings, what should be the key takeaways, right? So those things, again, I've discussed in the book. If you want to go in detail, you can read it. Let me now find out, what is your perspective about cyber crimes? What can you see on the screen? Modern art, blocks, colors, anything tangible, anything comprehensible?
Blocks.
Sorry?
Sir, black blocks.
Black blocks, okay. It's not a modern art. Let me help you in terms of deciphering what it is. Can you see now? See white as L-I-F-T.
Lift.
Can you read lift now?
Yes, sir.
White
Yes,
portion
sir.
is L, this is L, this is I, this is F, this is T. So when the lines were not there, you were finding it difficult to read. Once I put on lines, you found it easy to read, right? But let's see if I remove lines. Can you read it still?
Yes.
Reason is, now you are having that thing in your mind. The line is there in your mind. So your perspective has changed once I have told you what it is. Similarly, when I tell you about cyber crimes, the kind of stories or kind of techniques criminals use, if it is discussed with you, if it is known to you, criminals cannot do fraud against you. But if you are like, you don't know about stories, your perspective remains that these are blocks, and that is where you fall for the crimes, right? So you need to understand that we need to have a different perspective, and this different perspective will not only help us safeguard against cyber crimes, it will also help us develop newer solutions, right? So okay, this is cyber unsafe. It is available, and this changes your perspective again. Can somebody read it for me fast? You have to read it fast. One person. One person who can read it out loud and fast.
I could not believe that I could actually understand what I was reading. Using the incredible power of the human mind, according to the research at Cambridge University, it does not matter in what order the literate in a word are. The only important thing is that the first and the last letter be in the right place. The reset can be a
The rest can be
the
a
rest
total
can
mess.
be a
And you can still read it without a problem.
Total mess.
total mess, and you can still read it without a problem. This is because the human mind does not read every letter by itself, but the word as a whole. Amazing, huh? Yeah. And I always thought spelling was important.
See, it is completely jumbled, but you can read everything. Reason is, human mind is intelligent. We are creative, we are intelligent, and we become used to of doing things. Once we become used to, a 5-year-old will not be able to read it. But a adult who has been reading a lot can read it. And that is what again exploited by criminals. What they do is, they know that whenever you will install an app, you will say next, 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 next. You will say, yes, I agree, yes, I agree. Do you know what are the terms and conditions of Facebook? Have you ever read? Nobody has read, I guess. Facebook terms and conditions says, one of the paragraph says that any photograph which you post on Facebook can be used by modifying in any way for any purpose in the world using technology. That means using artificial intelligence, they can change your photograph. They can use your photographs as by changing it to a video. They can edit it. That means if you are holding a coffee mug in your hand, they can change it to a beer mug or a wine glass, whatever they want to edit. So your photographs can be changed, edited, videographed, enhanced using AI, and can be used for any purpose anywhere in the world, including any new technology which will come in future, using which they can do something else with your images. That can also be done, and you are giving them that exclusive right. They're also saying anything you type on Facebook can be used, Anything which you type on Facebook but does not post will also be captured and will be stored and can be used. So let's say if you're writing a comment or writing a post, you type 5 lines and you remove 2 lines. Those 2 lines which you removed later on will also be stored by Facebook and will be used. This all right we have given to Facebook because we are having habit of saying, yes, I agree, next. And that is what criminals exploit, right? So what I'm trying to highlight is technology has to be used responsibly. And when we talk about forensics, the definition of the forensics I'm going to give, which is application of scientific techniques to detect and fix a crime. Detect means a crime has happened. Fix means to find out who has done it. Fix means also to find out how he has done it. To link a criminal from the crime with some kind of evidences. One more definition which is there is reconstruction of sequence of events of past, where we are trying to answer what happened, who did it, why he did it, when he did it using technology. So we are basically applying computer science knowledge, computer science algorithms for developing solutions which can be used for investigation of cyber incidents. So that is our digital forensics. So this I have discussed when I was starting, social media is fun according to most people, but it depends because they know a lot about you. Where were you last year this time? Can anybody tell me? Exactly at this point of time, what were you doing last year? Anybody who can tell me this with correct answer? You can actually tell if you go to Google, because Google knows everything, because your phone has a timeline feature and it stores every activity. Let's say 1 year back, if somebody was there at a restaurant eating something, it will exactly tell you which table you were sitting and probably what you ordered because you also paid bill using phones, or you took a photograph of the food items and they are there in your gallery of images where Google Photos have stored. So Google knows everything about you, Facebook knows everything about you, and you will be surprised how much data is there about you on Google. So if you go to takeout.google.com, at least 5 to 10 GB of data is there. You go and submit your request, they will ask you that come back after 1 hour and download the data, and they will give you a file which is 5-10 GB file which contains everything you have done so far which Google knows about you. You can actually disable it. You should disable it at times if required. And this is very useful for law enforcement agencies. That means if you are working to develop solutions for law enforcement agencies, you should develop, for example, that takeout.google.com gives you complete dump of data. But let's say if somebody can write a parser, a query-based parser, which can be used by police to query. Let's say if a criminal has been caught, his data has been taken out, but police has to go through every piece of data. But if you write a queryable GUI-based tool where this file can be attached, now police person can ask, okay, whether these 3 people were there together in last 1 year anytime together, and so on. So a query-based, system where multiple files about multiple user which has been downloaded from Google or Facebook can be given as input, and police can run a query that is not available. So that kind of solutions also you can try to write. It's very important to know that people have myth that one can be trained for investigating computer fraud and cybercrime. Yes, it is not something which you are born with. You have to spend time. You need to undergo training, which means a bootstrapping is required. That means you have to do some kind of course, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 year course. And you have to constantly update and read and do research about what's going on new with the technology. And then only you can become a cyber forensic expert or investigator, right? This is common, press delete and data is gone, or press shift delete or format or repartition, data is gone. Actually not. Whatever you do, once the data is created, it will remain forever. It can be recovered, and recovery depends on the person's capability, person's willingness, person's knowledge, and person's resources to recover data. Even if you break a hard drive or cut a DVD into pieces, data can be recovered, right? So data once created will always remain. It may be difficult to recover, but it is recoverable. Hence, the learning is never create a piece of electronic data, video, audio, or text which you do not want to retain forever, because it may come back and haunt you. There are n number of cases where private photographs or objectionable videos and language or text or messages has been retained, which were sent in good faith initially, but are misused later on. So this is something which you should probably take care. Date and timestamps of digital data are not reliable. They are not authentic. They can be changed. They are very easy to change using GUI based tools. For example, this, if you see, it says This file has been created in 2001, created in 2003, modified in 2001, which is not possible. And this can be done using some kind of very easy GUI based tools, because using API I can go and change whatever date and timestamp I want, because data is stored physically somewhere and I can tinker with it. So we require solutions for such kind of problems. Right? People say criminals are techo geeks. Probably not. Most of the frauds are done by people who are normal people who know very little about technology. They download tools and run tools. Let's say I will show you the example of a bad design. Which mail do you think is the best mail in terms of security? Yahoo, Rediff, Gmail, India Times, any other? Come on. I'm asking a very simple question again.
Gmail, sir. Google.
Gmail. Okay. So when I was doing my research or working, what I did is, if you see here, it is a 2009 screenshot. In 2009, when phones were not linked to, mail accounts typically, I used to go to this particular option. I cannot access an account. I used to randomly say forgot password, and I used to choose a name. Let's say my name is Gaurav Gupta. So I used to choose Gupta.Gaurav, or then I will change surname but keep the name same. I will say Bansal.Gaurav, Tayal.Gaurav, Sharma.Gaurav. All those are email IDs, and say submit. So out of 10 email IDs randomly selected, 5 it were asking me questions. And questions were like, what is your favorite color? Because whatever a user has chosen. Can you tell me what is the answer of favorite color you should give?
Red.
So what I used to do is, because Google was being Google, they allowed n number of trials. So if you start giving answer red, green, white, basic colors, out of 10 colors, 1 will be right, and you will reach to a point which is reset the password. Now what is the issue here? Issue here is, first of all, Google is not asking anything other than the email ID and the favorite question, which means anybody can try to attack. Second is, users, as I told you in the beginning, who makes crime possible? It is users who make crime possible. Because we are so truthful that we are writing actual color as an answer. My favorite color is blue, I am writing blue. Anybody can guess it. What should we do? We should never write answer of a secret question in a related fashion. For example, if I have to answer this question, favorite color, my answer would be cat. Is cat a color? No. That means nobody can guess it. So whatever, let's say there are questions, what is your first car? Everybody knows what is your first car, right? So if I have to answer this question in my questions, what is my first car? I will say Aryabhat. Aryabhat was a satellite of India, right? But it's not a car. So that means nobody can guess it. Whenever you are choosing a secret question, your answer and question should not be related. So that it is safeguarded against guessing attacks. Right? So that's what I'm saying. So these kind of things have happened, and it was not a bad intention, but it was resulting into account being compromised. Both because Google did not do the design properly, and users were giving correct answers and not expecting that in cyberspace you need to be a little more careful. Right? So some of the things are not so important, so I'm skipping. Okay, internet and online gaming addiction I have discussed. It is becoming problem, and why it is becoming problem? Because we are hooked onto these kind of things. We are spending 2 to 10 hours on Facebook. We are playing online games. Infants, very small kids, people are showing on, videos to feed them, and that becomes addiction later on. So screen time is causing physical and mental health development problem with the kids also. So we must develop responsible games, responsible solutions so that people do not get addicted. So in today's world, survival of the most aware is the mantra. And survival can only happen when we know how things are happening, what criminals are doing, and how they are doing. Right? So free is always bad. I have discussed juice jacking, which is free chargers. I have discussed about lost and found USBs. So these kind of frauds are also happening. Hardware keyloggers are there, which are being used by criminals. So, very helpful tip is prevention is better than cure. It is applicable in digital world also. We should be going for prevention by knowing about how criminals are doing crime, by understanding and reading what is the modus operandi of the criminals. And if we don't do that, then we are in trouble. Right? With this, I think I'll stop here. I will discuss about what all questions you may be having, and I will answer those questions. And if you want, you can reach to me on this email ID. Let me go to here. You can note down my email ID in case you have questions. You want help in terms of some kind of internship or research ideas or project ideas. I will be happy to discuss. Right. So with this, I will stop here, and I'm open to questions if you have any. And I'm also going to post my LinkedIn profile where I keep on updating new things. And if you want, you can connect with me on that.
Please show your mail ID again. GauravG@gmail.
Okay, let me show you it again. Wait a second. Can you see it?
No, GauravG. Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
And then I'll say stop sharing, and I will post my LinkedIn details so that you can connect with me on LinkedIn, where I keep on updating what all is happening in this cyber world and how it can be done. And I also have a copy of my book with me. Here I have discussed about what all can go wrong and how can you safeguard in terms of stories. Your questions, please.
Sir, cyber forensic certification. Sir. Any courses on cyber certification, like cyber forensic certification?
Yes.
Is there any courses on cyber forensics?
So cyber forensics, see now information security master's program and undergraduate programs are there where cyber forensics or digital forensics is one of the course. There are certificate course or some certifications which are now coming up in this area, that is also there. People are doing, I'm doing work on digital forensics, people are doing PhD, so specific PhDs are happening on this area. So there are a lot of things which are there, short-term, long-term, and master degrees and undergraduate in the area of cyber security where forensics is an integral part. Going forward, you will have master degrees and undergraduate programs only for digital forensics also.
Heard about synthetic images. So they are making fraud with synthetic images.
Yeah.
Can you tell about those things, sir?
So as I discussed, this person does not exist.com. That is a synthetic image that has been generated using what you call that AI or ML, machine learning, using GAN, and those are your synthetic images. Detecting those requires different set of image processing. It is not that synthetic images can't be detected. There are academic research which has happened, and there are solutions where you can differentiate between a synthetic image and non-synthetic image.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes. No more questions?
So
Hi, Gaurav sir.
Yes.
Any
Please.
current issue important? Any current issues, sir? Problem related.
Can't hear you, ma'am.
Current issues, sir, for research.
Foreign?
Current issues.
Current issues, as I'm telling you, mobile forensics is very, very difficult. And then when users are using, let's say phishing is one very important problem. Image doctoring and authentication of image, whether it's a genuine image or a counterfeit image or a artificially generated synthetic image, detecting those are some of the important problems. And then, there are hundreds. So that's where I'm saying, I keep on posting new research problems on LinkedIn on my profile every now and then. Whenever I encounter and develop a new problem statement, I post it there. So probably you can follow me there.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, please.
So it's a very wonderful session that we have a very much informative session we have listening from morning.
Thank you.
Thanks to NIT Sakib. Sir, I have a question like most of our daily transactions like bank transaction, credit card and everything. The authenticity which all are familiar is OTP. That if we have an OTP, then we are strongly recommended that nobody can theft our money and all those things.
Right.
So, sir, my question is there any other technology instead of OTP that which we can make more stronger?
Actually, see, people are working on passwordless world, and there are no great solution yet. So OTP is kind of password, right? Permanent password or one-time password. So that is a very good area of research which you have actually helped me tell everyone. Develop solutions which are alternate to OTP or passwords. That is a new area of research. Not enough work has to be done. No good solution. And if you can develop one, you can become millionaire because everybody will be using it. And that is what also I have discussed. So whatever questions you have asked, I think most of it is there in some form of other in my book where I have highlighted how to do and what to do. And I have also given out some research problems and the research ideas there.
Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon, sir.
Yes, please.
Gaurav sir, thank you, sir, for the very informative session. Sir, actually, I'm thinking that can we develop such type of the browser that can detect such type of the attack at the early stage?
Yes, you can. And that is what the work is. So not only browsers, you can also develop browser plugins because your browser may not be used by everyone. Both things. New browser development is which are secure and can detect attacks. Second is develop solutions to detect attack which can be given to the browsers, existing browsers as plugin.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so with this, I would like to close the session. If you have any more questions, please feel free. And I will strongly recommend you to buy the book and spread the word to others, also to so that they can also buy the book. We are soon going to be out of stock because we never knew that it will be in demand. It will become bestseller. Since it has become bestseller, I will recommend you to order soon before it runs out of stock. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for this insightful thoughts and good wishes. This was a great honor and opportunity for everyone to hear from you.